Alright, so for funsies, I'm going to show you guys maybe how to UV something a little bit more organic, like this weird face I made a while ago, and I've been reusing for a bunch of stuff. So just grab the face and hit it. You'll notice that the UVs are quite awful. For some reason, half of the face is chopped up. I really don't know why. So I'm going to just do the thing that I normally do, which is assigning a UV checker texture to this. And again, if you just Google UV checker texture, you'll find one on Google. Personally, I like this one. I don't really know why, but I do. So I'll just hit 6 to make that visible, and you'll see that I am an alien. This is a character of myself. So what I used to do is actually just auto map this, and then take literally all of the faces and cut them all apart, and then restitch them because that gave me the best results. But since Maya updated their UV system, I think now the easiest way by far to do this is to just do a planar map and then use the 3D cut and sew UV tool. So a lot of times I'll sort of start by just flaying the head open at the back. So I'll just double click on that back line here. And I think I usually also, for some reason, end up just chopping the ears off. Because ears are... Actually, I'll cut the ears here. Because ears are just awkward. By the way, by the time, if you guys ever end up taking organic modeling, ears are literally the worst. There's no good way, per se, to attach them. You just need to sort of splice them randomly onto your model. I can't even see what I'm clicking on right now. Oh, the cool thing, which I actually completely forgot about, the cool thing is that this tool actually has symmetry on it. So like if I turn on symmetry for my object, I'll just recut this here, and you can see it's cutting the other side of the ear off, which is super awesome. Because now you don't need to cut all of your ears off separately, and you'll see that it just separates those UVs when it's done. It looks like I missed an edge here. Perhaps my model is not symmetrical. I don't know. Whatever. Come back to that later. By later, I mean now, apparently. It's in the front of the ear. Interesting. Okay, yeah, so it like missed a little face here, but I mean, now I have separate ears, so yay. The other thing I feel like I usually end up doing when I do a face, so let me actually I'll just grab these guys, grab all these guys, and just do modify unfold. Where is their non-manifold geometry in this? Alright. Weird. So you can see that here is my glorious face that has been stretched to all get out. So I look at this. Honestly, this isn't terrible. It's not fantastic, but like, it's not awful. So like, if you look at the top of the head, that's pretty good. The squares are like relatively square. The sides of the face are also relatively square, relatively uniform. So the things you want to look at are like, are the lines curving really crazily? And are the squares relatively square and the same size? So like you'll notice here on the neck, there's an insane amount of stretching. Like this square is not a square anymore at all. So like that's something that I would want to go through and look at. And maybe add some more cuts in here. On the bottom, this is again also really bad as a square. And then towards the back of the head, you'll notice that the squares get smaller. Which is basically a sign like that the UVs are actually getting larger. So the larger the UV is in relation to the actual geometry on the model, the smaller the texture is going to appear, because it's sitting on basically a larger percentage of your texture file. So what I'm going to do is just keep going back. The first thing I'll do is like fix this this bottom part here. I'm just going to cut this whole bottom chunk off. And that's its own shell now. It can just sort of hang out in the back. And I think, end up having to like fillet right behind the ears. So like if I grab this now and do a modify unfold, you can see that the textures at least like on the bottom here and in the back of the head, are a lot more uniform in shape. In shape and in size. It also looks like there's still a little stretching by the ear, but for now, whatever. Usually I'd also have to go through and like cut the nose out, or like not cut the nose out, but if the nose is enormous, a lot of times I have to cut it out. This one seems to be reasonable enough where I might just leave it. Like you'll notice that there's definitely some stretching and stuff going on. So like this if you look at this V here, this is way bigger than this V, and they should be the same size approximately, but in this case I think I'd rather just have the entire face be its own, a single thing without any seams in it, rather than cutting out a chunk of the nose in the front. One thing I might perhaps look at is like the neck area. Like I might go in and just like cut from here, perhaps like from here to here, and then from here back. Just to see what that does. Sometimes it helps, sometimes it doesn't. What did I just do? Modify, unfold. Okay, that actually made it kind of worse. Interesting. Alright, yeah, that made it totally more horrible down here. Like, just in a ridiculous way. Alright, so I'll just go back through, I guess, and add those back together. One really cool thing about the UV cut and sew tool, if you click on the tool settings, they'll give you all of the like keyboard hotkeys for stuff, which is great because I admittedly do not remember what any of them are. So I'm just gonna like control left mouse button click, and I'll sew that neck back together. And then I'll just go to UV show, modify, unfold. Alright, so that's kind of better. And then you'll notice the ears are still... Actually, the ears aren't even that bad. They're not great. But they're also not totally awful, so... I think what I might actually do is just do a modify layout. And you'll see that it sort of smushed everything into the UV plane. So I mean, that was actually probably the easiest UVing I've ever done on a face, like ever. If you wanted to go back in and optimize maybe how this was laid out a little bit, you could probably take the shell. It looks like you could get this a little bit bigger if you turned it up straight and scaled it and then moved it perhaps a little bit. And then since I have object symmetry turned on, when I drag this ear, it drags the other ear, I think, is what is happening here. If I turn off symmetry, what happens? I've actually never seen it do that. Yeah, so now I can move the ears separately. And then it looks like, yeah, so the one thing you'll notice, so like these, if you look at the size of like this grid of squares versus the ones on the chest here, this is way bigger, which tells me that I should probably take this and scale it up a little bit, so that the squares are more uniform. A lot of times, if I'm never going to see the bottom of this model, I will shamelessly ignore this and just leave it whatever size. But I'll just move this over here, grab this, and then shift this perhaps over a little bit, and scale this down ever so slightly and move it back in. So now I have UVs that should be laid out nicely on your UV plane, and this would be, I would say this is ready for texturing. Cool. So since that actually took surprisingly less time than I was expecting, I'll just do the hair really quick as well, because I can. So I'm just going to use basically the same process as before. It actually looks kind of nice with the texture stretching in my opinion, but it looks like, so you can see, maybe, I don't know, to mesh separate on these. Yeah, so you can see I started with like a basic cube here, and the UVs just got like real funky. So I'm just probably going to do a planar map on most of these, and then I'll just come back in with the 3D cut and sew tool, and I'll just try to like hide my seams somewhere not super obvious, like maybe on the inside of the hair in here. And maybe also like down here. My usual thing with UVing is like a lot of times I'll just sort of click around until it does kind of the shape that I want. That was what is this even? Okay. Weird. This is actually odd that this is so horrible looking. So there. Oh, I see. Okay. So the reason it's still attached, I missed a few faces in here. I need to cut these guys off. So now theoretically, if I do my shell, it should, yeah, stretch out, and be theoretically reasonable-ish looking. Like here's my hair. You can see that all the squares are relatively uniform. And one thing I might do just to like make the shape a little bit nicer is like come through and I'll cut off this little edge down here, and then I will control click just to sew this edge on instead. So you'll notice when I did that, it distorted the UVs really bad. So again, just go into modify and do an unfold. And the seam is like at least in a little bit, it's in a slightly better spot. And since this is in the head, I'm not terribly worried about the stretching in here. But you can see like the outside still looks pretty nice. So yeah, I mean, oh god, that's horrifying. But yeah, I mean, I'd pretty much just go through and systematically do all of the hair like that. And then if you wanted to, when you were done, you could come back and like grab all of the hairs. If you select them all at once, you can see all of the UVs for them in a single area. So like I could go back and lay these out so that I could texture them individually if I wanted to do something like that, so that you could just do one texture for all the hair. You wouldn't need to do like a single texture for this piece and another texture for this piece, because that would be absolutely horrible and maddening. You could just throw all of these on the same texture file, and then texture as needed, basically. So like I said, you have one texture file for multiple pieces of hair, and you just assign the same material to all of the hairs, and then you're good. So